I would like to take a few minutes here to discuss video game mascots. While I see the matter discussed from time to time, the issue is basically a non-issue. Mascots no longer seem to have the place that they once did in generations past. Nevertheless, since there's no harm in discussing it and people seem to like to discuss it, I'll play along. Now, I don't think there's any question about who Nintendo's mascots are. Besides Mario, they have a large roster of easily recognizable, familiar characters that most gamers would have some familiarity with. And then after that, when we look at Microsoft, they of course have Master Chief. I don't think there's much question that Master Chief would be Microsoft's mascot. The place I most see this discussed or debated is from the Sony camp. Who should be Sony's mascot? Now, a few generations ago, they were dancing around a Crash Bandicoot out there on their commercials. But of course now Crash Bandicoot's no longer a Sony exclusive. He's hoarded himself out to pretty much anything that they make video games for. So who can the Sony boys use as a mascot? Well, of course, one popular one is Solid Snake. Now there's a problem with that. Ideally, I would think that your mascot would need to be somebody exclusive to your console or console line, and in this case the PlayStations. But the problem is that Metal Gear and Solid Snake are not and have never been Sony exclusive. And I got here a little bit of an illustration. See if I can get closer to camera here. Hopefully you can see it. This is Metal Gear. It's the same Metal Gear franchise, the same developers that produce the Metal Gear Solid games that everybody enjoys today. And Snake is the character, as I recall, in this game. This came out back in the 1980s. This is a cartridge for the younger folk that aren't familiar for the Nintendo Entertainment System, which came out back in the 1980s, the early 1980s. So Snake and anything from Metal Gear is pretty much out of the question. You can't have much of a mascot for your console if he's also on your rival consoles. And aside from the fact that he was originally on the NES long before there was ever a PlayStation, there were also Metal Gear Solid games a generation ago for the GameCube and for the Xbox. Not to mention that even this current generation here, Solid Snake is a playable character on Super Smash Bros. Brawl for the Nintendo Wii, complete with his own Metal Gear theme stage and music. Another one I see people like to suggest is Final Fantasy characters, especially from Final Fantasy VII in either the form of Cloud or Sephiroth. Now there's another problem with that. This here, let's see if I can get closer here, is the original Final Fantasy. I don't remember exactly the dates on this when it came out. It took several years to come out in the United States. I think in the end of the 90s in the US, a few years earlier in Japan. Either way, the first 6 core Final Fantasy titles were Nintendo exclusives, actually, before there was ever a PlayStation, on the NES here and then on the Super Nintendo. Now, not all of them were ported to the United States, which caused some confusion there with the numbering. The first 3 Final Fantasies were on the Nintendo Entertainment System, which in Japan was the Famicom, but it was the same, basically, console. And then the next 3, 4, 5, and 6, were on the Super Nintendo or Super Famicom in Japan. The problem is only 1, 4, and 6 were at that time ported to the United States and renumbered as 1, 2, and 3. So, but nevertheless, the first 6 core titles were Nintendo exclusives long before there was a PlayStation. And then now in more recent years, we're again seeing Final Fantasy titles on non-Sony consoles. So again, I'm going back to where I would think you would like your mascot to be something exclusive to your console or console line. Final Fantasy is not. So even though Sephiroth and Cloud might not, and I can't be for certain on this, might not appear on other consoles, non-Sony consoles, the franchise definitely does. And again, never originated on Sony hardware. And while I was digging around for those, I did find a game here. This is something that I don't see people suggesting for a mascot, but I just thought I'd throw it out here. This is Ninja Gaiden for the Nintendo Entertainment System. I also have Ninja Gaiden 2 and 3 cartridges in there as well. I just wanted to throw it out there. So I don't really know who they would want to be their mascot, but the point here is that some of the franchises that the Sony gamers associate with Sony and PlayStation aren't really, and never have been, exclusive to Sony or the PlayStation. So I'm not here to submit suggestions for who you would want to be your mascot, whether it be Kratos or Nathan Drake or whoever, but I'm submitting to you for your consideration that certain things are not really good candidates for mascothood for Sony. So there you are, and we'll see you next time whenever I have something else to rant about.